On this episode of This is Game Boy Lite, we're the Dummies. Welcome everyone to another This is Game Boy Lite episode. I am Belthic Gaming, and as always, these Game Boy Lite episodes are basically fillers for between our main episodes, either done by Mo or myself. Never have they been a collaboration. Not saying it won't ever happen. Rare chance. And before we dive into this episode's game, a little bit about what I've been up to. Classic WoW just came out August 26th, so literally all of my time has gone to that because that's the game I've been super excited to play. Outside of that, a lot of just like casually sitting around watching TV. I needed a break from a lot of things, and I forced myself to do it. I did a little bit of speedrunning. I did some Who Framed Roger Rabbit Game Boy speedrunning. I did a little bit of N64 gameplay, just casual gameplay. I did some Super Nintendo casual gameplay. I beat all 3 Donkey Kong countries, plus Shaq Fu and Shin Chan 2 on Super Nintendo in a week. And then just a little bit of de-rusting for Big Bad Game-a-thon. I'll be running Felix the Cat, Game Boy. No, not Felix the Cat. That's a good game. Titus the Fox. There we go. I knew it was an animal of a sort. Titus the Fox, Game Boy. And Sesame Street ABC on NES for Big Bad Game-a-thon. That is September 20th. And then, today's episode, this episode's game is The Incredible Crash Dummies for the Game Boy. Obviously for the Game Boy. When we come back from our short little break here, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the developer, the publisher, whom I know you all love, and what the game is all about. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So The Incredible Crash Dummies, a game that most people probably did not know that came out for the Game Boy. The game actually came out for a couple different systems. The Game Boy, the Game Gear, the Sega Genesis, and the NES. I'm assuming there might have been a Super Nintendo version as well, too, that I'm not 100% certain on, because I mainly focus on Game Boy. The game was developed by Software Creations, and I know Mo and I have briefly touched base on Software Creations, but Software Creations was a breakoff of Ocean, and if you don't know who Ocean is, Ocean gave us such hit games like The Addams Family, Batman, Dennis the Menace, Lethal Weapon, Rambo, RoboCop, arcade conversions like Chase HQ, and amongst many other dabblings, Jelly Boy for Europe. But Software Creations, there is a gentleman by the name of Richard Kay who got a job at Ocean, but not as a programmer, but as a warehouse stocker. And he has such an interest in Atari and how the Atari games were made. He bought a computer with the earnings he made with Ocean and tried to teach himself assembly, which was how those games were made back then. After a while, Richard basically started creating a game and showed it off to John Woods, who was the Ocean director at the time. And they basically brought him on as a programmer, but still kept paying him pretty much little to nothing. And then after a while, Richard's interest peaked at he was interested in flying, so he actually joined the Air Force. However, upon getting accepted, they found out that he had some sight problems. So obviously you can't be a pilot when you have sight problems. At least you couldn't back then. But not a hindrance by any means. He went on to basically create some of our favorite games, honestly, like Plock. If you ever played Plock for the Super Nintendo, that was a very good game. But that's basically how software creations came to be. Richard was part of Ocean, this and that, whatever. Kind of hit a bit of a ceiling. Wanted to go do his thing. Broke away from Ocean and founded Software Creations in 1985. And then he found a business partner in Steve and ran with it, basically. Software Creations is still kind of, sort of in play today. The Pickford brothers, who worked for Software Creations, now do mobile iOS games. So the business is still kind of sort of around, but not in its grandiose glory that it once was. And then the publisher, what can we say about the publisher? It is the Rainbow of Dreams, published by LJN. So it's either going to be a very good game or a very mediocre game. LJN's never published a bad game in their life. And the game was released in November of 1992, so still kind of early in the Game Boy life cycle, and it very much shows. The gameplay is not what you would expect. Well, it is what you would expect, but not what you would expect. Most of the listeners that will listen to this episode have probably played the NES version of Incredible Crash Dummies, where it is a left to right platformer, and you actually have a weapon. Like it's an actual game. It's a left to right platformer where you have an actual weapon, and you defeat bosses and such, and you have power ups and whatever. The Game Boy version is nothing like that at all. The Game Boy version is broken up into 5 loops with 5 mini games per loop, I believe. Maybe it's 4 loops. I think it's 4 loops and 5 mini games. So the way it works is day 1 is your crash on top of a building, and you jump off the building head first, and your goal is to break through the awnings and collect insurance money along the way. As you are falling, there is fire coming out of a window. If you touch the fire, you basically lose a hit point, and once you've hit the fire so many times, your dummy catches on fire, and you have to do it over again, essentially losing a 1-up. As you get closer, as you start scaling the building, get closer to the bottom of the building, there is a bullseye. If you land right in the bullseye, you get extra money. What the money is that the money is an indicator to move on to the next stage. If you do not gain enough insurance money throughout the game, you do not progress to the next stage. Honestly, in the first stage is super easy. You literally just avoid fire and you're good to go. The next one is a driving sequence, and the driving sequence is a nightmare. In the first loop, the driving sequence isn't so bad, and you have a lot of padding. But as you get through loops 2, 3, and 4, the driving pattern is a lot more tighter, and the timing to get to the end is a lot more tighter. So what you need to do is, as you are driving through this crackled, disgusting mess of a road, you need to collect these NOS-looking bottles, essentially. And the more you collect, the more magnetic you are for the car. And the reason that's important is because at the end, it's not really a magnet at all, but it's just like it's a speed boost but at the end, it just looks like a magnet is pulling you into this wall to crash. If you don't have enough booster to make a sufficient crash, you don't gain that much money and you don't progress to the next stage. The first roadblock any player will hit in this game will be the driving sequences. So the next minigame you have after the driving sequence is something called Ski Slope. And even in Loop 1, Ski Slope is a disaster to get through. So the biggest issue with Ski Slope is it's hard to determine what your hitbox is because it's at an isometric angle and you turn at 45-degree angles. So it's really, really difficult to understand if you're going to hit a tree, hit a log, hit a snowman. It's really, really difficult to understand what's going to happen. But as you get through this, you need to collect flags throughout and find the ending to the ski slope. At the first loop, the ending to the ski slope is at the bottom of the hill. Pretty easy, right? As you push through, the maze for the ski slope becomes a little bit more intangible on areas that you can and can't go, or should and shouldn't go. So the ending is still at the end of the hill, but it may not seem like it's at the end of the hill because it's like it'll just randomly pop up on a hill that you're on. So for this, you want to collect flags as you're sliding down the hill. For the easy objective, you want 15 flags. The normal objective, 20 flags. The hard objective is 25 flags. And then once you've gotten past that, you go into the bomb factory, and this is by far the easiest mini game there is in the game. All loops. So the goal of the game is to pack 40 bombs before the day's end without blowing yourself up. Obviously, this number increases: 40 bombs for easy, 50 for normal, 60 for hard. You have 3 conveyor belts, and on these conveyor belts are going to be pieces of dummy coming down the conveyor belt that needs to drop into the bin, and along with dead bombs as well too, non-lit bombs. And as the conveyor belt is being pushed through, there's going to be lit bombs coming past, and you need to hammer the lit bombs to put them out, basically, or blow them out. Because if a lit bomb falls into a canister, that conveyor belt is no longer active, and nothing is coming out of that conveyor belt. Which doesn't seem like a terrible thing, but if you want to get past that minigame a bit faster, then you want to try and keep all 3 rolling. I know when I first played it, when I got to the very last loops of the game, I would purposely let one of them crash, just so I only had to control two conveyor belts because of how fast the game actually becomes towards the end. And then the final minigame of the loop is the cruise missile. And this is where most people will give up on the game, throw the controller on the ground, take out the game, light it on fire, and throw it in the garbage bin. This is the hardest minigame in the game, even starting from Loop 1. It's very comparable to Solar Jetman. If you've ever played Solar Jetman on the NES, the controls are almost 1-to-1 spot on with Solar Jetman. It's low gravity, momentum based ship movement. So you start off on a launch pad and you traverse yourself through a cave with the world's crappiest momentum and the world's crappiest rocket speed you could ever imagine. And along the way, things are popping out of the ground, shooting at you, or just being directly in your way. So you also have to understand and maneuver around obstacles using the world's worst controls. Then at the end of the stage or in the middle of the stage, it really doesn't matter because the landing pads are random for every single loop. So like in loop 1, it's at the end. Loop 2, it's kind of in the middle. Loop 3, it's like 3/4 of the way through the stage. Loop 4, I don't even remember where it's at because I've only ever done loop 4 once in my entire life. So, and you have to be perfect on landing on these landing pads. By the way, if you were just a pixel off of the target, the game is like, oh, you crashed, redo this minigame again. You have to land in the target. If you do not land on the target, it will make you redo the minigame. And there is no insurance money, there's no nothing to counteract this. If you fail and crash the rocket, you restart the minigame. And if you fail and crash the rocket so many times, then you get to redo the entire loop over again. So, after you've completed the 5 stunts, the game will essentially reset and you will move on to the next loop, which is the normal difficulty. And then it's literally the same 5 stunts again, just a little bit harder. So the head diving sequence has a bit more fire and it's a bit longer to do. The driving sequence has a different map, so you kind of have to memorize what's going on there. Ski slope is a different layout. The only one that stays the same is the bomb sequence. That one almost never changes in any of the loops at all. And then the rocket ship one, or the cruise missile, is atrocious. And there are 4 loops to this. There's an easy, normal, hard, and a hidden, very hard mode. And once you've beaten the first 3 loops, once you finish the first 3 loops, you kind of get this like mock ending, so to speak. And then you transition into the 4th loop. And the 4th loop is the true ending. Once you've beaten the 4th loop, you get the end sequence with credits and everything. Like, it is the real game's ending. However, there are no continues in the game. So if you make it to the 4th loop and game over, you get to start from loop 1 and do it all over again. It is fantastic. So, yeah, it's very much a video game, to say the least. Luckily, there are cheat codes. If you ever looked into like you probably want to find this in the Nintendo Power, but if you bought the tips and tricks magazines from like the 90s, or what other magazines were there? I always went for tips and tricks, Cheat CC, and Nintendo Power whenever I was looking for stuff like this. But you can access a cheat menu, up, down, left, right, at the title screen. And then you can insert a plethora of codes to progress into whatever day or stunt, rather, that you wanted to go in on whatever loop that you wanted to go on. And then there is a secret 2-player mode to this game, which I've never played. I do want to try this out. I do have a secret way of trying out two-player Game Boy games without having a second player. And it's just press select, start on the title screen. I'm very curious what a 2-player game mode for this game would be. I don't know if it would be like a competitive, one person falls and you try and gain as much money, or if it's like Titus the Fox, where both are on the screen at the same time and you both are simultaneously falling. I would be very curious to see what a 2-player version of this game would look like. And besides that, when we come back, we're going to take another quick short break. When we come back, I'll give you a bit of a history with this game that I have, a small speedrunning segment, because I did make the leaderboard for this game. And then just a bit of the normal closures, the upcoming marathons, where you can find us, the whole 9 yards. You guys listened to these episodes 100 times, I suppose. Stay tuned. Back, everybody. So my oh god, my chair is exploding. My history with this game, I personally had no idea this game existed for Game Boy. I played, so I knew the NES version existed because I remember renting the NES version as a kid. Then a couple years back, one of my speedrunning friends, Dark Terex, reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm doing a blind race of Incredible Crash Dummies on Game Boy. Are you interested?" And I was like, "There's a Crash Dummy game on Game Boy?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I wonder if it's anything like the NES version because Dark Terex speedran the NES version." So I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll give it a blind race. Whatever. Give it a go." And then we popped it in and realized that it's completely different than what any of us were expecting it to be. So I finished the first loop before everyone else, and I was like, so the game's continuing. I did a loop. This game has loops. I was like, what is the game goal for us? And we were all just like laughing, debating. We're like, I'm like if we do one loop, I'm done. And like, yeah, we're gonna do one loop because this game isn't fun. So we did one loop, and then afterwards, myself and 2 other people blind raced the NES version. And when I mean blind race, like I haven't played the NES version in years before this, so I really remember nothing about the game at all. And yeah, it took me like 7 hours to beat the NES version versus like the 15 minutes it took me to do one loop of Incredible Crash Dummies on Game Boy. And then I was like, you know what? The Game Boy game's not awful. It's just very different. It's not what you would expect. So I sat down and did some routing, some efficiencies, and I got a run down to like I think 5 to 7 minutes. I think it was, and I created a speedrunning leaderboard for it. And within a couple months, I think I had like 5 or 6 people running the game. Obviously, the world record got taken. I believe Guy Blues might have it right now. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I only made the leaderboard one loop. I'll probably end up going through and making a full game leaderboard, which God bless the person that that does that. So I might do like a 1 loop, 2 loop, 3 loop full game type leaderboard. I haven't 100% decided yet on how I want to lay that out, but and then after that I did it for Game Boy Adventure, and for Game Boy Adventure I only did 1 loop because I was very uneducated on how that game worked, and there wasn't any information online about the game at all, with the exception of a very, very mediocre walkthrough on Game Facts. So I did 1 loop and I called it a day on Game Boy Adventure. And then I came back. I did some reading. I was just like there's gotta be more to the Crash Dummies game than just 1 loop. So I found a cheat code menu for the game online. I was like, all right, let's see if these cheat codes work. And I pop them in. I'm like, okay, day 5. Okay, I figured out these are the stunts. Okay, difficulties for the loops. And I saw that there was a 4th loop called very hard difficulty. So I put on very hard difficulty day 5, which was the final stunt of what I now know is the final loop. And upon beating that, I got a true ending. And I was like, oh, there is an ending to the Incredible Crash Dummies on Game Boy. Okay. Well, that changes literally everything. So I revisited Crash Dummies for the Game Boy. And because I believe Mo and SprintingLegs were also looking at the game and just like, oh, it's only one loop for game goal. And then I came along and ruined their day because they saw what I initially had because I was uneducated, and then I went through and actually beat Crash Dummies on Game Boy. I did all 4 loops and got an ending. And then I was like, nope, correction. There are 4 loops to the game. You have to beat all 4 loops to get the true ending. Here is a video of the true ending, just to show everything in stake there. So that was something else to be experienced. Since then, I haven't played Crash Dummies. I have wanted to submit it to a marathon. The issue is that it's such a short game that it's really hard to fit it in a marathon. Because I don't want to sit down and practice all 4 loops. I don't want to, and I don't want to do one loop that's 5 minutes long. Like, it doesn't make sense to have like a 10-minute setup time for a 5-minute game. So I've been wanting to showcase it in a marathon. I just don't know how to do that quite yet and not play the entire game for 4 hours, because final loop is impossible. So yeah, like I said, I briefly touched base on the speedrunning stuff. I created this leaderboard a few years ago. When I typically create a leaderboard for any game, I've created Atari leaderboards, Fairchild leaderboards, obviously Game Boy leaderboards. For any game, like, I don't like go out and like, hey, everyone run this game, here you go. I basically make a leaderboard for those people that are like me, that search for super obscure games that, you know, to speedrun. I'm not one to follow a pack of people like, I'm gonna go run Super Mario 64. I'm gonna go run Link's Awakening wouldn't be one, but A Link to the Past or things of that nature. Like, I'm not one to flock towards that mass. I'm more of a, oh, this leaderboard only has 2 runs and it's a game that no one has ever heard of before in their life. Let's check out the run. Looks like a neat run. Let's run it and submit it time to the leaderboard. That's more so how I focus on my speedrunning stuff, because I find the obscure games to be way more enjoyable to play and way more enjoyable to watch. And it always strikes a nice conversation, like when you're streaming it on Twitch, YouTube, wherever. It always brings up a nice conversation with your chat. It's like, oh, I've never heard of this game before, or, oh yeah, I remember this game, or like, I briefly heard about this game, or hey, isn't this a game that does this, and then you have like a conversation rolling as you're learning or running or whatever it may be. Like, you can get more of that interaction with your audience that way too. So, but yeah, that's my history. There's the speedrunning stuff for the game. There's no weird glitches or anything of the sort that I'm aware of or that any of us are aware of. You just got to be good at the game. Memorize literally everything about the minigames. So yeah, with that said, a few marathons coming up here. We have... So game submissions are open for Distant Star Cares Extra Life 2019. Wow, that's a title. Benefiting Extra Life in Prisma Health Children's Hospital, starting October 31st through November 3rd. Submission deadline is September 7th. Well, probably after this episode is released. And the game list will be revealed on September 14th. For those of you that don't know what Distant Star Cares is, Distant Star Cares is a semi-annual video game speedrun charity marathon held in upstate South Carolina. So, Keep your eyes peeled for that. Obviously, Games Done Quick submissions are happening. I believe that they might be closed by the time this episode comes out as well. Awesome Games Done Quick is in January. If you are going to the event, remember that is in Orlando, Florida this year, and not Bethesda, Maryland, or wherever it has been in the past. So make sure to bring your anti-crazy spray for that one. Let's see here. With that, we have Big Bad Game-a-thon coming up on October 20th. Stay tuned for that, man. A Big Bad Game-a-thon is so fun. It's a weekend long marathon of just great video games. And then coming up later in the year, we haven't gotten any information about it, but we know it's probably going to be coming, is Power Up with Pride Winter Edition. Typically that's sometime in December. Obviously we have the Tiny 10 popping up here within probably the next few months. Mo will have more information on that as it gets closer. And then all of our friends at Retro Gaming Live TV, aka RGL TV, they always have something crazy going on, whether it's one night only tournaments, raffles for what a person is going to be playing on stream next, to what other marathons they have going on. They have like a Nestcathlon where they do, 10 or 20 NES games. They have like a Disney marathon where they play a plethora of Disney games from various platforms. Our friends at RGL always have something going on, so make sure to check them out as well. With that, I'm sure there are some more marathons that I'm missing or forgetting, and I apologize to those that listen to this and have a marathon. The issue is that no one tells me these things, with the exception of Taco Tomcat, and I literally have to browse through all of my Discord channels just to pull the information I do have for marathons. So, if you do listen to this podcast and you are a marathon organizer, or know of a marathon coming up that is related to retro gaming and or speedrunning. It doesn't even have to be speedrunning specific, just retro gaming even, like the Zelda universe stuff, like the Zelda marathons that happen. Those I don't consider a speedrunning thing. They're just people casually playing Zelda for however long. So let me know. You can tweet them at me, DM them you can slide into my DMs on Discord if you so willingly choose. And then just let me know what you got going on. The details, so mainly just the minimum details is the date when it's happening, the date when submissions closed, the name of the event, and just a quick brief what the event is about. So yeah. With that, you can find me at Belthic Gaming on Twitch and Twitter, YouTube someday when I get around to it. You can find our wonderful producer, SprintingLegs, who I'm giving this episode exceptionally late for because I didn't know when I needed to record it, because I don't keep a calendar for anything. You can find her at SprintingLegs on Twitch, Legs on Discord, Legs on YouTube. And of course, you can find my wonderful second half, Moelle, aka Mo, Moelle, Moelleuh, on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. So go give them a follow, go give them Twitch bucks, go do whatever it is that you do on the internet. With that said, I will talk to you all next time. And the next time you hear from us, it'll probably be the Spider-Man episodes. Yeah, Spider-Man episodes. You heard me right. Multiple episodes of Spider-Man with Mo and myself. Reading through my notes, sorry, legs. Gotta scroll down on my notey notes. Ski slope, there it is.